Hi, I'm Katie Ziskind. I'm the owner of Wisdom Within Counseling and Coaching. And one of my specialties is working with men who cross-dress, who want to talk about sexuality, sexual orientation, kinks, fantasy, and may even be struggling with how to identify as a cross-dresser or as bi-gender or two-spirited, and also maybe pushing back on purity culture, overcoming a conservative religious upbringing, and developing self-acceptance. So you can learn more about me and work with me by heading over to wisdomwithinct.com. That's wisdomwithinct.com. In today's video, we're going to talk all about cross-dressing. Cross-dressing is one of my specialties. I love working with men who have a feminine side as well as a masculine side. And let's dive in. So a lot of our society's messaging or cultural messaging tries to put us in very tiny boxes when it comes to gender expression. And cross-dressing is a form of gender expression, and for some people, it's also a form of erotic or sexual expression. But first and foremost, cross-dressing means that you enjoy wearing women's clothing. Maybe that's the feeling of silk on your skin, or the soothing sensation of nylon stockings on your skin, or there's a very specific style of clothing that you like. But you may really enjoy the sensation of wearing a bra, pink panties, lace, and maybe even more traditional women's sportswear or athletic wear, dance wear. And you're also kind of like, how can my spouse accept this? How do I talk with them about this? Or maybe you're starting a new relationship and you're like, when should I talk with my, this new person that I like about my cross-dressing side? Like, will they accept me? Will they not want to continue on? So you may be having a lot of self-doubt, and you may have also experienced a binge and purge cycle. A binge and purge cycle is fueled by shame and guilt, which is not something that you were born with. It's something that society, family, parents, friends, religious views has given you. So the shame and guilt is something I help you overcome. But when you go through a binge and purge cycle, you end up feeling really good from cross-dressing, and you put on lipstick, you put on mascara, and you're feeling so good about yourself, you're feeling so authentic. And then you get this huge, overwhelming sensation of guilt and shame, where you then take your wigs, all your feminine clothing, all the shoes that are finally in your size, and you throw them all out. So you might go to a dumpster in your town, or kind of have this purge because you're afraid of people finding out. You might be afraid that you'll lose your job. You might be afraid that your kids will not accept you. You might be afraid that your wife or your spouse might divorce you if they find out that you're a cross-dresser. There's a lot of internal self-criticism and hatred, as well as shame and guilt, that fuel the behavior of throwing everything away. And this is really common because young boys are not given messages that they are acceptable for crying, or that crying or showing emotion is a strength. And young boys are told, don't be too girly, from a very young age. So the shame is like a contextual factor when it comes to cross-dressing counseling and the specialty of cross-dressing coaching, because I want you to feel accepted, loved, and like you belong, in that cross-dressing is totally normal, healthy, and okay, as long as you are respecting yourself and not hurting yourself or others. But we have to look at that shame and guilt cycle, because that usually fuels the binge and purge patterns. And then eventually, maybe 3 months, maybe 2 years goes by, and you start craving to express your feminine side again. You buy nylon stockings, you buy feminine clothing, you buy shoes online, and you're getting excited again with new packages coming to your doorstep. But maybe again, that fear starts to come back in. And so we start to see this circular pattern. Now, cross-dressing is a soothing technique. It is a calming, relaxing experience for a man to wear women's clothing. And it's it's often an anxiety coping tool. It's often a way to manage work stress. It's a way to release the responsibility of being a financial provider, the stress that comes with dealing with a lot of employees, or being a person who has a lot of responsibility at work. Cross-dressing is a way to release that tension, stress, and kind of come back home to yourself. So there's a huge relaxing benefit to cross-dressing. Also, cross-dressing can have an erotic side, or allow your erotic self to come out. So we all have a sexual self, even if some people are much more disconnected from their sexual self. But for a lot of people, cross-dressing can also be erotic. The sensation of nylon stockings on the skin can create arousal. The feeling of, a pretty dress, seeing yourself in a pretty dress, getting, shoes, getting socks with ruffles on them, like lace panties, getting a matching bra and panty set, like all of this can be very sexually arousing and exciting as well. So that's also very normal and healthy, and there is nothing wrong with you. The only thing that we start to see is where there's secret keeping around cross-dressing out of fear of being ostracized or fear of divorce. There may also be secret keeping around not wanting to share your fantasies, not wanting to share your kinks, almost like keeping your sexual self suppressed, or feeling like you can't talk about sex or fantasy or desire with your spouse. And that's when therapy and counseling can be really helpful. We have to actually unpack purity culture messaging if you were raised in a strict conservative religious upbringing, because a lot of boys receive messages: masturbation's bad, sex is taboo, sex is only for procreation, that sexual pleasure is not something that's embraced in a strict conservative upbringing. And you may be carrying overwhelming shame because you believe there's something wrong with you for being a cross-dresser. But this is not something that's wrong with you. This is a beautiful side of you. Your feminine side and your masculine side both deserve to be expressed, accepted, and loved. But when we're raised in a strict conservative religious upbringing, we develop negative beliefs that we have to have. Let's say we learn we can only have sex if we're going to have kids. But a man that cross-dresses may want to receive anal penetration, may want to use a butt plug, may want to explore their anus in terms of pleasure. And that's really common, maybe wanting to explore a submissive role. And so you're kind of battling these religious beliefs or religious messages that create shame. And you're also kind of wanting to explore sexually and talk about maybe safe anal play or how to incorporate that with a partner. Because that's sex, that's for pleasure, or that's sexual play that's pleasure oriented and more focused on enjoyment and exploration rather than for the purpose of having a child. So I'm here to support your sexual journey, talk about your sexual orientation, talk about whether you might identify as bisexual, pansexual, homosexual, heterosexual, asexual, right, demisexual. There's so many different ones. Or maybe you want to talk about self-expression. So more of what clothes you want to purchase, how to talk with your spouse or partner or a new person you're dating about your feminine side, and how to do so in a way that embodies self-acceptance, confidence, and mental clarity, rather than approaching these conversations with insecurity or self-doubt, which can almost create an experience of insecurity for the person receiving that. So that's a big piece of things. Also, I work a lot with survivors of sexual trauma, sexual abuse, incest, and molestation. So this is separate from cross-dressing, but I often find that a lot of people have been sexually abused or forced to endure unwanted touch, or were raped in the past. And as we're talking about cross-dressing, these other experiences come up. So you get a safe place to, talk about abuse that you've endured, the lasting emotional scar, how that plays a role in your sexuality. Maybe there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn trauma responses coming up. You may have a belief that you're damaged, and we kind of have to work through that and develop self-acceptance and self-confidence. A lot of survivors of sexual trauma or sexual abuse don't have a safe place to talk about these things. And you may believe, that something was your fault, or you asked for it, or, maybe you did something wrong, or you should have prevented it, or you should have spoken up. And there are all of these beliefs that you're kind of like dealing with related to self-blame. And these can be interwoven into our sexual expression. So it's so important to know that if you are a survivor of any type of unwanted touch, sexual abuse, sexual trauma, rape, incest, it was not your fault. Does not matter what you were wearing, does not matter how your body responded. Even if you were, let's say, raped or received sexual abuse in some way, your body physically may respond in terms of arousal, but it does not mean that you consented to that. And so we do a lot of support for survivors here at Wisdom Within Counseling and Coaching around sexual abuse recovery. And so this is a huge piece of when we talk about sex and intimacy and libido, desire, fantasy, erogenous zones, foreplay, all of these aspects that play into intimacy, sexual abuse and sexual trauma, as well as complex post-traumatic stress disorder, are some of our specialties under the umbrella of sexual intimacy and gender expression. So if you're a survivor of sexual trauma, we would love to support you. And if you identify as a cross-dresser, I hope that this video offered you some support and self-acceptance, and to know that it's awesome to express your feminine side, but we can work through those fears of abandonment, fears of rejection, fears of being ostracized, fears of losing friends if people found out, and how to help you develop a more aligned and authentic, confident sense of self. So I love working with men who cross-dress, who have kind of two aspects of their sense of self. I also work with people who are transgender, who are, gender nonconforming, who are kind of wanting a safe place to talk about everything in the LGBTQIA plus umbrella. And you also get sex positive education and medically accurate education in terms of sexuality and gender here at Wisdom Within Counseling and Coaching. So if you'd like to work with myself or Nell here on our team, you can head over to wisdomwithinct.com. That's wisdomwithinct.com. If you'd like to send me a text message, I'm happy to respond back to you. That's a United States phone number, 1-860-451-9364. That's 1-860-451-9364. But the best way to get started is through our website, wisdomwithinct.com. Now, to wrap up this video, I'll give you a short little bit about myself. So I'm Katie Ziskind. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in a variety of states, and I specialize in gender, sexuality, intimacy, desire, and even sexual dysfunctions. So if you need help talking about sex, having a safe place, getting familiar talking about your sexuality, wanting to explore kinks and BDSM, I would love to support that. I am a certified sex therapy informed professional. As well, I'm a Gottman Level 2 trained marriage specialist. I incorporate inner child work to help heal those inner child wounds. I specialize in attachment, so emotionally focused therapy, kind of talking about anxious attachment style, avoidant attachment style, and how to help couples build a secure attachment style. And I help couples really see the link between those inner child wounds and those deepest longings and their current conflicts and really difficult high conflict fights. On top of this, I specialize in survivors of complex trauma. So sometimes we think like, oh, just a veteran that goes to Iraq can have trauma. But really, if you're bullied as a child, if you have a narcissistic parent, if you have a parent that emotionally neglects you, even having a sibling with special needs that took a lot of attention away from you growing up, all of these things are considered traumatic events. And being abused in any way, having things occur to your body without your consent, this does leave a lasting emotional scar. And that shows up in terms of a completely dysregulated nervous system. So I incorporate somatic yoga therapy, yoga nidra, relaxation practices, mindfulness meditation, self-talk, visualizations to support positive thinking, and mind-body therapies for trauma, in addition to traditional talk therapy. So I incorporate art, painting, clay, yoga, gentle stretching, and yoga nidra, which is an incredible practice for trauma survivors, and to really help move it out of the body. Because if we just talk about trauma, it can sometimes live in our body and cause distress. So I would love to work with you. You can head over to wisdomwithinct.com. And I hope you know that cross-dressing is completely normal, healthy, and okay. And I would love to help you communicate your needs and desires with your loved ones.